One of the things to also think about that I've been kind of exploring is this notion of customer burnout. And so we're oftentimes worried about our own organization and making sure that we are creating a good culture and empowering our employees. And then within the design department, how do we make sure that we are creating a culture of freedom and empowering our designers not to feel burnt out? But another thing to think about is when we think about our customers, how can we make sure that our processes and the processes of the industry, some of them we have control over, some of them we don't have control over, how do we try to mitigate and control the burnout for our our customers? An analogy to this is in the healthcare field. There's a lot of provider burnout, and but there's also a lot of patient burnout. Patients call the hospital, they can't get in, their leg hurts, they have to wait a few weeks, then they finally get in, then they get referred to the next person, and then that's a few weeks out, and then the provider calls in, and then that pushes them out a few more weeks, and then the medication they get isn't working, so they have to get another appointment, and then before you know it, the patient has decided, you know what, it's actually easier just to deal with the pain rather than to deal with this system that I'm a part of. And so if we think about the event industry and we think about that client that comes through the door that needs something last second, how can we create such a good experience that actually our employees feel empowered, but actually our customers also feel empowered, so that you can the easiest customer to get is the one you already have, and if you can alleviate their burnout, um, they're going to stick with you for life. And
Do you talk about this in class, Satchel?
oh, we talk, well, which parts?
Well,
The organizational.
I'm first of all, I'm blown away to sit and think that there's a group of incoming designers that are sitting there thinking about customer burnout, not their own burnout, but because I mean, if you talk about a serve you mindset, right?
Yeah.
If you're recognized, because this is a it's funny, I read a study that said the an event manager is the fifth most stressful job in the United States. It's right behind police officer, which is number
Yeah.
4. So an event manager is right behind the people that get shot at, right? And you go, now that's stressful. So for a designer, for an incoming designer to be thinking about, look, to have the empathy about what they're going through and the stress of that job, and they're very, for a lot of reasons, right? They may be on the edge of burnout with, we know how frustrated they are with the lack of transparency on costs. Um, I had this conversation with the exhibitor advocate, some of the board members, and they said, I'm a master's degree in marketing person, and yet I am constantly 50% over budget at the end of my show and event. And I look like an idiot to my vice president boss that I report to. And it's not that I'm not managing to a budget. It's that there's all these hidden costs that keep showing up. And I mean, talk about an anxiety. And they live in fear of, will my job be limited? Will they get somebody else because they just don't like the bad news? And I'm working like hell to try and manage these, but when there's 29 different ways to calculate material handling fees, I can't
Yeah.
estimate what that, right? So, but again, all the way through the beginning of the process, for a designer to just be empathetic to a customer that lives with that level of stress is just amazing to me.
I think our industry depends upon our customers not being burnt out. When we think
Yes.
about, which we are so focused on our own organizations, but when we think about the industry from a more macro level, we didn't know what was going to happen after COVID. We weren't sure what was going to happen, and we didn't know if everybody was going to be living their lives with a headset in the metaverse, or what. And one of the awesome things that I'm so grateful for is we almost have a renaissance in togetherness, and the event industry is thriving as it should. But in order to continue its success and actually take it to another level, we have to be mindful of all the participants and all the stakeholders involved. And if going to an event is so much work, that the organization is losing its employees because they're burnt out, then they're not going to be knocking on our doors to do the project. And they're not going to be knocking on your door. And again, we're creating a system of oppression in that manner that is at a more macro level.